I work the night shift at a haunted motel in Nova Scotia. The rules are for your protection. I never should have opened that door. The chill in my bones is real. It was just another night shift at the Whispering Pines Motel. I could hear the wind howling outside, rattling the old windows. My hands trembled around the phone, the familiar sound of the ticking clock that felt more like a countdown than a timekeeper. A low creak echoed through the dim lobby, pulling my attention. Just the building settling, I convinced myself. But as shadows loomed, I couldn't shake the dread crawling up my spine. The air was thick with stale coffee and something I couldn't place. It hung heavy, like a warning, as if the ghosts of past patrons lingered, watching me. You see, they say the motel has a life of its own. Guests checking in, never checking out. Whispers of laughter echoing down the halls, of doors creaking open when no one was there. Just rumors, I told myself. I glanced around. The flickering neon sign outside cast eerie patterns on the worn carpet. It was cold, unnaturally so, like the breath of the dead circling me. I could almost hear them, imprints of their stories whispering from the walls. The front desk was cluttered with forgotten keys, each one a doorway to someone else's past. I tried to focus on the mundane tasks, restocking the lobby supplies, checking the booking sheet, but the shadows flitted at the edges of my vision. Suddenly, a thud echoed from room 13. My heart raced. Dread clutched my chest. Most guests avoided that room, strange things happened there. I told myself it was nothing. People were checking in and out, of course, it's just a busy night. But the shrill sound of sirens in the distance felt way too close for comfort. And then a soft, rasping laugh floated through the air, chilling me to the core. It came from nowhere and everywhere. I froze, eyes darting. The room seemed to morph around me, the walls breathing, or was it me? The lobby lights flickered again, casting ominous shadows. Items on the desk began to wobble slightly. A pen, then a keychain, all swaying as if someone unseen was testing their balance. Hello. I forced the word out. The silence swallowed it whole. My palms turned clammy as dread wrapped tighter. A glance toward the hall, the shadows lengthened, seemed to move closer. Click. A door creaked open behind me, uninvited. Time froze. My breath hitched. I could feel every heartbeat in my ears. A figure silhouetted in the doorway, shrouded in darkness. I blinked, and it was gone. Just like that. A rush of cold air swept through me. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. Who could it be? Just then, the lights went out. Panic shot through me like lightning. I reached for the emergency flashlight, hands shaking. Before I could get it lit, I heard a whisper. Help me! My breath crystallized in the darkness. I stumbled back as the whisper echoed louder, more desperate. Help me! And then a scream pierced the air, splitting the silence like glass. The figure reappeared, face obscured in shadow. Everything in me screamed to run, but my feet felt stuck, locked in horror. Then the door slammed shut. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness enveloped me, thick and suffocating. I fumbled for the emergency flashlight, my hands trembling uncontrollably, knowing I had only moments left to reclaim my sanity. The last remnants of light flickered, mirroring my fear, before it bloomed into a weak beam, casting long shadows upon the walls. Help me, the whisper came again, slithering into my mind, twisting like ivy wrap around a crumbling tombstone. My heart thundered, every instinct screamed at me to run, but I gripped the flashlight as if it were my lifeline. In this oppressive darkness, I turned toward the source of the voice, drawn despite myself. The echo of that faint plea chilled me, weaving around my thoughts like a sinister lullaby. "Who's there?" I called, my voice quivering, swallowed by the oppressive void. The air thickened, and I felt Athena's presence brushing against my skin, cold as death, sending ripples of dread spiraling down my spine. It was no longer just an orb of darkness but something far more sinister. That moment felt like an eternity as shadows flirted at the limits of my vision, beckoning me to step closer, to unveil their horrors. The door to room 13 ajar now swayed gently, the hinges whispering secrets only they could decipher. I edged forward, compelled by curiosity but anchored by terror, the flashlight beam revealing a trail of dust shimmering like forgotten memories. I stepped inside. The decor was as aged as the stories held within, floral wallpaper peeling back to expose the decaying wood underneath. My breath hitched at the strange warmth enveloping me, heavy with the scent of stale perfume, the air thick with a perplexing stillness. There, in the center of the room, a single chair sat facing the wall, as if someone had been waiting. For what? For whom? As I approached, the whisper intensified. "Help me." For a fleeting moment, it felt almost personal. My heart raced as I reached for the back of the chair, the fabric worn and threadbare. But as my fingers brushed against it, my breath escaped in a shaky gasp. A name scratched into the wood beneath the fabric caught my eye: Lydia. A spark of recognition ignited. This was the name of a girl reported missing. The hair on the back of my neck stood at attention. I could feel eyes on me, watching, hungry for acknowledgement. I shivered, glancing towards the corner of the room. Shadows danced there, whispering secrets just out of earshot. Then I heard its small movements, a shuffle. Someone or something was in the corner, lurking just beyond the cone of light. I swung the flashlight towards it. The light flickered, revealing nothing but an empty closet door slightly ajar. Moments passed like hours before I reached out with a feigned bravado. My heart pounded, drumming against my ribs. The whisper wrapped around my throat, tightening as I wrestled with the urge to flee or confront whatever lay hidden. Through my rapid breaths, I caught a movement inside the closet, something shifting. In a moment that felt inexorable, I yanked the door open, surprise slashing through me as a gust of icy air erupted. The closet was empty but draped in shadows, whispers circling like a haunting melody. I stepped back, the sensation of being watched magnifying. My mouth felt dry, and instinct drove me to turn around, to flee back into the safety of the hallway. Just as I turned, another scream echoed through the halls. This one felt familiar, woven with despair. It was the same voice: "Help me." It pierced through my core, drowning logic and reason. Time slowed as I sprinted down the corridor, my heart a relentless drum echoing in my ears. Behind me, the door to room 13 slammed shut once more, as if the motel itself had awakened to my presence. Shadows twisted, elongating at impossible angles in my wake. And then came the laughter. High-pitched, manic, slithering through the air and wrapping around my throat. It was everywhere, a symphony of madness that danced across my skin. I raced toward the lobby, each step punctuated by that laughter pulsing closer, weaving into my very being. "Get out!" A voice roared from the lobby, someone or something desperate, broken, and then I saw it, chaos unfolding as a figure vaulted over the front desk, an expression of terror etched across her face. It was another staff member, but her eyes widened in sheer horror. "Run! They're coming!" In that moment, the shadows surged, billowing like a storm, and as I turned to flee, the lights went out once more. My heart sank as the oppressive darkness swallowed me whole. In the silence that followed, a hand gripped my shoulder. The cold seeped through my skin, and I froze. "Help me," the voice whispered, echoing right behind my ear. In the pitch black, dread spiraled, and I realized whatever was there was not human. The grip on my shoulder tightened, and I felt a wave of freezing dread sweep over me. It was an unnatural chill that invaded my bones, echoing the same cold that had surrounded the room with the chair. I stammered, trying to regain my voice as anxiety wrestled with the primal instinct to fight or flee. Get off me. I gasped, but the embrace only deepened, its icy fingers intertwining with my hair, pulling me closer into the void. The whisper grew louder, demanding, a symphony of despair that resonated from both the thing behind me and the shadows all around me. Help me through my elbow back, the contact jarring, but just as I turned, my vision expanded momentarily, a glimmer of the world beyond the darkness, a figure, shrouded in a veil of shadows, its face a mass of contorted features shifting like smoke. Eyes glinted with what seemed like madness, swirling, and turning, faceless, yet all-knowing that I stumbled forward, yanking away from its grip. Behind me, the laughter erupted again, echoing through the corridors like the crackling of flames. It scattered into my mind, igniting memories of Lydia and the faded stories that had haunted this place. I needed to escape, but a heavy weight pressed against my chest, urging me back into the suffocating abyss. Please, I choked out, struggling against the overwhelming urge to surrender to the darkness. Just as I gathered the resolve to push forward, the hand relaxed and released me. I spun towards the noise, a mix of relief and resistance flooding my veins. But the room stood empty, mocking me with its silence. A cold draft whipped past me, followed by the sound of a door creaking open behind me. It was the door to room 13, slowly inching itself ajar once more, like an invitation laced with malevolence. My pulse quickened, a gnawing curiosity battling with every rational thought in my head. Compelled by both fear and intrigue, I edged closer to the doorway, peering into the dimness. The beam from my flashlight flickered softly, but it was enough to catch a glimpse of movement, a shuddering form curled tightly in the far corner of the room. Lydia? I rasped, not fully understanding why that name slipped through my lips. The whisper replied in a chilling harmony, "Help me." The childlike voice echoed eerily, dripping with despair, reverberating off the cracked walls of room 13, drowning me in its innocent yet haunting agony. I pushed the door wider, barely breathing, stepping inside once more. As I approached the form, the shadows thickened, swirling into grotesque shapes. My flashlight illuminated a small figure, huddled and trembling. It was a chilled no, a girl, her face obscured by a curtain of disheveled hair, but from beneath it, I could sense a familiar terror. "Please," she said again, her eyes flickering as they found mine, "help me." The shadows curled around her, flickering and swaying, holding her in a cruel embrace. "What do you need? Where are we?" I stammered, desperately trying to connect with her reality, to pull her away from the grasp of this nightmare. "Not here," she whispered, the shadows tightening around her as panic surged within me. "They cannot see you. You're not safe." Before I could process her words or my next move, the silence shattered. The air vibrated with loud thuds, rhythmic and slow, coming from behind me. Guttural growls and whispers cascaded in a hurried rush. The oppressive darkness surged forward, and the shadows twisted, revealing vague silhouettes that danced with malevolence. "Run!" The girl screamed, but before I could react, everything shattered like glass around me. Cracking noises erupted from the walls, splintering my mind as the shadows swamped toward me, threatening to consume me whole. I turned, adrenaline igniting every nerve as I bolted for the door. But just as my foot crossed the threshold, a sharp pain pierced through my ankle, a hand cold and slender, gripping me, pulling me back into the chaos, and then I heard the laughter again. It was no longer distant but filling the room, echoing through my very soul, a chorus of the lost, a cacophony of the damned. As I was dragged backward, the girl's eyes went wide with horror. "Help me!" She screamed again, but I was slipping away, pulled into the eternal night that threatened to eclipse everything. My heart raced, desperately pleading for a way out, but the shadows tightened their hold, and then there was nothing but darkness. A final shriek sliced through the air as the room faded, replaced by a pure void, and in that moment, I understood, I was not the one to help. I was merely another desperate soul, drawn into a maze of nightmares where even the innocent could not be saved. And just before the abyss swallowed me whole, I felt a pair of hands slide through the darkness towards me, as if a new presence had emerged, one that I had never wanted to know. "Welcome," it whispered, "to the other side." The darkness enveloped me like the cold grip of a vice, squeezing every ounce of light from my existence. I floated in the void, suspended between worlds, the whispers growing louder, merged into an overwhelming din that throbbed against the edges of my consciousness. It was inescapable, a chorus of despair echoing, twisting, and slithering through the abyss as they called to me. Join us, they seemed to chant, a seductive invitation laced with sorrow that promised solace in the depths of despair. I fought against it, clawing at the air, desperate to resist their pull, but it felt like grappling with smoky hands just slipped through as the voices beckoned like sirens, tantalizingly close, yet dangerously far. Suddenly, the weight shifted, and I felt myself falling, gravity awakening as I plummeted into the chilling tempest. My body met the ground with a jarring thud, sending shockwaves through me, and I gasped, fresh air filling my lungs, air filled with the acrid scent of decay. That I opened my eyes, blinking against the muted light filtering through the windows of room 13 only. It wasn't quite the same room I had left. The shadows presided over the corners, thicker, darker, shifting ominously just beyond the periphery of my vision. I could feel them watching, waiting. As I pushed myself up, my heart stuttered, breath hitching in my throat. The little girl was gone, and I was alone again, but not truly. Around me, a multitude of items lay scattered as if someone had been searching frantically for an escape. Frayed dolls with eyes that seemed to follow my movements, overturned furniture, and shattered glass. The room breathed a strange life of its own, haunted by the remnants of countless tragedies. My gaze fell upon the single remaining photograph atop the cracked dresser, familiar and horrifying in its implications. Lydia, her face worn with fear, a dismal echo of longing that made my skin crawl. I stumbled closer, reaching out, but as my fingers brushed against the frame, a sudden surge of electrical energy shot through me, leaving me gasping. In an instant, the surrounding air thickened, becoming a tangible force that pressed against my skin. "Help me!" Lydia's voice enveloped me again, floating from nowhere, yet echoing through my very core. Every instinct shrieked in protest, urging me to flee, but I found myself transfixed. Time stretched and warped as the echoes of laughter morphed into a frenzy. Growls, childlike shrieks, and twisted cries spiraled into a maelstrom that sent my composure spiraling. The walls shimmered, flickering as if they were life itself, pulsing with malevolence. I could almost see faces in the walls, distorted and lost, their mouths open as they screamed wordless pleas, forever trapped in this hellish purgatory. That I am not here to help. I shouted against the wall, anger surging through my veins. You're trapped. I can't save you. But my rebellion felt weak, eroded by the haunting chorus that wrapped around me. With a surge of desperation, I turned to the door, scanning for any sign of exit. My breath quickened as I approached, heart pounding as deafening thuds reverberated through the wood, the sound all too familiar. I barely noticed the shift of shadows converging at the threshold, thick and serpentine, weaving into a shape more solid than the chaos around it, a swathe of darkness growing into the outline of a man. "Fear not," a voice emerged, deep and resonant. "You are exactly where you are meant to be." I froze, paralyzed with dread, the icy tendrils of recognition wrapping around me. I knew this presence, I had felt it in the void, in the shadows. The man drifted closer, an inky silhouette with flickers of light weaving through him, presenting a horror that was both captivating and horrifying. "I am the conductor of this symphony. Welcome to my dominion. Leave me alone." I spat, fear and fury igniting in equal measure. Just as I turned to flee, the windows burst open violently, a rush of wind swept through like a howling banshee, crashing furniture against the walls and sending a shower of dust cascading in a confounding storm. And then from the shadows, countless pairs of eyes flared to life, flicking open one by one, faces emerging from the walls, mouths opening in a frantic chant, all merging into one shrill cry, desperation intertwined with an insatiable hunger. "Help us! Help us! Help us!" As I was swept back into the chaos of trembling shadows and ghastly faces, a raw scream tore itself from my throat. The real nightmare hadn't even begun, it was only a taste of the horrors left to come. The darkness hungered for something vital and precious, and it had chosen me, and in that moment, I realized with harrowing clarity, I hadn't been summoned here to help these souls, I was chosen to join the dreadful chorus. With a final rush of adrenaline, I bolted towards the door, praying for escape. But as my hand reached for the handle, I felt its cold, clammy grip around my wrist, pulling me back into the embrace of shadows. "Stay," the familiar voice whispered, dripping with darkness. "You're just getting started." The door slammed shut with an echoing finality, witnesses to the horrors that lurked just beyond. Trapped once more, I felt every shadow drawing nearer, a cacophony ready to engulf me. The last image I saw was the flickering darkness revealing chaining, twisting faces of the others, each desperate, each a reflection of myself, and then it all spiraled into a black void once more, holding no promise of reprieve, as the echoes swallowed my screams. The silence that followed was suffocating, a false calm that pressed down upon me like a weight I couldn't bear. I hovered at the door, adrenaline coursing through my body as panic gave way to an unsettling stillness. I could feel the darkness, thicker than before, swirling with intention, its presence palpable and suffocating. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, drowning out everything but the frantic thoughts racing through my mind. Think. I urged myself, trying to collect my scattered wits. The shadows still lingered, trembling, but they were no longer the frantic energy they had been moments ago. Instead, I perceived a methodical hunger lurking just beneath the surface, a deep-rooted desire coiled tightly, biding its time. The photograph of Lydia still burned in my mind, a conduit for the suffering that dwelled within this room, and I knew somehow I had crossed a threshold into something unending. With no clear plan, I reached for the nearest chair, now a grotesque silhouette teetering on the edge of reality. I hurled it at the door with all my might, but it merely grazed the surface and bounced away, swallowed back by the insatiable dark. "Stop!" I screamed, my voice breaking. "Let me out!" In response, the shadows twisted and coiled, a dark tide rising in a cacophony of whispers and laugh-like echoes. They encircled me, a cyclone of despair stirring memories I thought long buried. I stumbled backward, desperate for the corner of the room, where I clamped my hands over my ears to drown out the strident cries. "I am not like you!" I yelled into the void, but my words were swallowed almost immediately, lost in the disembodied wails that swelled around me. Then, among their shrieks, came a voice I recognized all too well. "You really think you can escape? We were all once like you." The echo crawled beneath my skin, chilling me to the bone. "Lydia." Her voice warped and twisted, a shadow of the innocence I had seen in her photo. "Now you belong to him, to us." A prickling sensation washed over me as the anger within me ignited anew. "I don't belong here." I fought against the encroaching shadows that reached towards me, yearning to stick to my skin like oil, not knowing how dangerously right I was. "I refuse to be part of your cursed choir," but the shadows responded not with words, but with actions. They shrank back for just a heartbeat before rushing toward me with furious energy. The room seemed to hum, a deep resonance in the floor and walls surrounding me, building to a frenzy as I felt pressure crushing my chest. In a moment of instinct, I lunged for the dresser and upturned it, sending the photo of Lydia crashing to the floor. The glass shattered, splintering the image further, and in that instant, a rift opened not in the room, but within me, a tremor passing through my very soul, like an electric shock striking the air itself. The shadows recoiled, then pulsed, vibrating with a newfound chaos. The laughter heightened, turning manic and unhinged, as they realized I had weakened their grip if only for a fleeting moment. But that moment was all I needed. "Now's my chance," I thought, and I dashed towards the far wall, my body moving on pure instinct. If I could just reach the window, maybe I could break free. Instead, I collided with the wall, its surface rippling like water, absorbing me just as effectively as the shadows had. "Stay with us," Lydia sang out, her voice a brooding lullaby, invading the space between my heartbeats. I squinted at the wall, at the flickering faces emerging again, but this time there was something new, something more sinister. They reached out with twisted fingers, scratching against the surface of reality, and each breath felt like a battle against an unseen force pulling me beneath the surface. Suddenly, the pulse quickened, the walls began to bleed darkness, gaping mouths forming in the plaster, ready to swallow me whole. They murmured in frantic unison, "Let us feast." And then, just as suddenly, a stillness fell, the walls freezing in place. The shadows that had been dancing around me suddenly flickered out, leaving only an eerie glow emanating from the space I had just tried to escape. "No," I breathed, horrified at what loomed before me. Doorway opened, not to the way out but to a dark passage illuminated by an otherworldly glow. Figures moved within, silhouettes of tortured souls tapping against the edges of perception, beckoning me with hollow hands. Join us, terror gripped my heart as I felt the shadows coalesce around me, felt their hunger sharpen to a brutal point. You may not like it, but you're one of us now. I couldn't pull my gaze away from the gateway of despair. The walls whispered my name, promising release from my solitude, from the burden of the living. Instinctively, I stepped back, but the shadows surged, engulfing me in a vice-like grip. And then, in that moment of immobilizing dread, I succumbed to the sheer weight of their presence, teetering on the brink of surrender. The last fleeting thought before everything slipped away was that perhaps, just perhaps, this darkness could offer me the salvation I had so desperately sought. But that moment was fleeting, as reality unraveled faster than I could comprehend. Before I could decide, the shadows pulled me forward, spiraling me into their welcoming embrace, and in that instant, the passage beyond the threshold burst with a light so vivid, yet profoundly empty, that my last breath caught painfully in my throat. Then it was gone, swallowed by the void that held me, as I fell once more, deeper into the nightmare. The light retreated, leaving behind a gaping maw of darkness that enveloped me with a consuming chill. I felt weightless, suspended between existence and oblivion, and the thrum of my heart echoed against the solid silence, a solitary drumbeat against an unfeeling void. But the stillness was deceptive. Shadows writhed just beyond my vision, demonstrating their potent life as they slithered and gripped my limbs with icy fingers, trying to pull me deeper into their relentless core. "Nix," a voice cried, sharp and clear in the suffocating dark. In an instant, I recognized it. Eli, my steadfast colleague from the motel. The warmth of his reality was a flickering light in the cold abyss. "Stay with me, Eli. Is that you?" I answered, but my own voice sounded weak, distorted by the layer of despair that sought to smother me. "I'm here. Don't let them take you. Remember the rules." His frantic voice sliced through the oppressive gloom, a lifeline amidst the shadows. I clung to the echoes of his words, feeling my strength surge as I latched onto the fragments of memory, the rules that had once felt laughably superstitious. "Never look into the mirrors at night," I whispered, the knowledge of their manipulation igniting my courage. "Speak only when spoken to." "Exactly." And always he hesitated, fear creeping into his voice. "Always keep your back to the wall." As if summoned by his command, I instinctively pressed my back against an unseen wooden barrier, a lingering remnant of the trembling corridor I had frantically escaped. The moment I made contact, the shadows shrieked, their thunderous chorus rising to a cacophony of anguish and rage. The wooden surface trembled with breath and pulse, responding to my presence, and revealed the outlines of what had retreated into mere hints of existence amidst the veil. "You don't belong here," they wailed in unison, their voices like nails on glass. "You will be cast into the void as was Lydia." My heart raced as I recalled the image of that tragic photograph, the haunting smile that had captivated me and the implications tucked neatly behind its glass. "What happened to her?" I demanded into the dark, my voice barely escaping my throat. "Her spirit is ours now." Another chorus chanted, the cold, maleficent intent simmering behind their words. "And soon, so will you be." I shook my head vehemently, panic twisted tighter around my chest like a vice. "No. I want," but the shadows lunged forward, their twisted forms shifting and transforming, embodying everything I had ever feared. Faces morphed from the darkness, terrified, anguished, and familiar. Each visage bore the weight of 1,000 screams, all of them pleading, begging for release. "Eli," I cried, fear shattering my composure. "I don't want to join them. Focus, Nix." Eli shot back forcefully, snapping me back to the fragile tether of sanity. "We cannot let them break you. Acknowledge their presence but don't let them take hold." Remembering the flicker of warmth I had felt with Ella's voice anchoring me, I fought to center myself. "I'm alive. I am here," I yelled, grounding my voice in certainty, defying the shadows that encircled me with malicious glee, but as I shouted, the shadows suppressed my sound, swallowing my declaration in a tempest of inhuman howls that clawed at my senses. I gasped as I became acutely aware of a new presence, lurking behind the tumult. Send her to us. The shadows conspired, a grating whisper that felt like insects crawling beneath my skin. Eli's voice broke through again, more strained this time. There's one last chance. Remember the flicker. The light of souls trying to guide you. Use it. I closed my eyes tightly, blocking out the chaos that threatened to overwhelm me. In my mind's eye, I recalled the slight glow faint, but enduring a flicker pulsing with warmth from Eli. It filled me with an urgency to act, to step back from the abyss that loomed before me. With a focus that bred desperation, I took a deep breath and reached within, my fingers raking against the air in search of the light. I see you. I shouted bravely, and I won't bow to you. And in that declaration, I felt a surge of warmth escape my heart, a spark igniting in the corners of the darkness. The shadowy figures screeched, unraveling like loose thread. I pushed against the unseen barrier, straining against its weight, feeling the fabric of reality bend and quiver until, just like that, I was hurled back into the chaos, propelled forward through arcs of darkness, and swiftly pulled toward a shimmering light at the far end of my vision. But just as I thought I could reach it, the world twisted and folded rapidly around me, and the light began to flicker, fading amid shadows of anguished faces reaching out. Their hollow pleas climbed until I felt as if my ears might bleed, and then stillness that I landed in a new space, a vast emptiness, void of time or form. The echoes of Ella's voice faded, replaced now with silence that bared down upon me like a heavy weight. And then, to my horror, I realized I was not alone. A figure moved slowly, stalking through the gloom, its form grotesque and contorted, rising from the very shadows I had feared. Welcome back, dear, it hissed, voice slithering into my mind like thick syrup. I have been waiting for you. My stomach dropped as the figure stepped into the sliver of dim light, and I was met with a visage that made the deepest crevices of my soul tremble. Lydia, but not in the way I remembered. Her face, a beautiful mask, was marred by shadows, the glow of her eyes an endless void, widening as she smiled. It's time, my love. Join me in eternity. That I stepped back, realizing the truth that would seal my fate, but the ground I stood upon seemed to shift beneath me, and then I felt it. The shadows surged forth, darkness coiling around my ankles like serpents, sealing me with icy tendrils. The last thread of hope frayed as Lydia stepped closer, her outstretched hand beckoning me into the void. Welcome home. And then, before I could scream, the world fragmented around us. The darkness shattered with a bone-rattling crack, splintering reality as I felt infinite layers of light cascading off what felt like icy fingers, each one latching onto my skin, pulling me deeper into an ever-spiraling blackness. Tethered to Lydia's haunting smile, I could hear the echoes of my own heartbeat, frantic and disjointed, mingling with the whispers of displaced souls trapped in the void. Within this abyss, time lost its meaning, minutes turned into millennia as new horrors surfaced from the depths I dared not acknowledge. Think, Nyx. I screamed into the whirlwind of shadows swirling around me. The rules. Remember the rules. My mantra poured from my lips, desperation lending strength to my resolve. Yet the moment the words left my mouth, the specters laughed, a cacophony of distorted voices that rose up like a tide, drowning out my feeble attempt at guidance. Only shadows abide in fear, Nyx, Lydia rasped, her voice syrupy sweet yet laced with venom. You're one of us now. A keeper of secrets. Before I could process her words, the tendrils of shadow tightened around my torso, constricting with sinister intent. Pain blossomed across my chest, and I gasped, feeling the chill emanating from those dark coils seep into my bones. My vision blurred, and I squeezed my eyes shut, summoning a flicker of the warmth Eli had ignited within me. Eli! I bellowed, my voice cracking, but there was no answer. Just the relentless cries of those who walked the edge of despair. I won't let you take me. Won't you? Lydia interrupted, effortlessly elegant despite the grotesque fluidity of her darkness. She stepped closer, each movement teasing the shadows, making them dance. Her smile was wide, lips curling around secrets long buried in the horror of those trapped in her realm. You were the one who sought the truth. Alone in that motel, the whispers, the aging mirrors, they called to you. the floor beneath us shifted as memories collided with the present. A flurry of forgotten faces and hushed warnings echoed all around me. Each visage bore testament to anguish, some reaching out with trembling hands, their cries merging into a singular wail, "Help us!" I felt the sky tearing above us, the fabric of reality ripping in unpredictable ways. I was slipping through dimensions, fragments of past lives colliding with my own. Lydia watched, delight coloring her expression as she savored my terror. "You need only let go," she purred, stepping so close that I could see the depths of her hollow eyes reflecting my own fear back at me, but I refused to yield, not to her, not to the shadows coiling around me, intent on dragging me into their despair. I remembered Ella's panicked words, "Use the flicker." It was a crucial command, urging me to forge my own path through the darkness. With a primal scream, I channeled every ounce of anger, defiance, and hope that still lingered within me. "You will not take me!" I yelled, flames igniting in the depths of my core, shockwaves reverberating throughout the darkness. Suddenly, the tightness unwinded as a blinding light burst forth, an ethereal glow that shattered the chains holding me captive. Lydia reeled back, her expression shifting into one of horror. "No! You miscalculated!" she shrieked, the shadows writhing angrily around her. They retaliated, clawed hands reaching into the brilliance, attempting to snuff it out. But still, the light surged, bathed in the remembrance of warmth, illuminating the hideous stares of the hollow souls around us. They shrank back, faces retreating from the radiance, their whispers transformed into gasps of longing, of lost chances. I felt them pulling away, desperation unveiling itself as they sought my light, hoping for solace and escape, and then, just as swiftly, the light began pulsating and splintering, threatening to extinguish as Lydia lunged at me. "Foolish girl!" she snarled, claws dragging through the bright ether. "This is my realm, I shall not be a part of your darkness." I roared, raising my hands as I concentrated every message, every scream of the trapped souls together into a sphere of blinding energy. "You may have once enticed me with your lies, but I choose life." Enraged, the shadows coiled tightly around me, the pressure feeling unbearable. They were determined to bury my will beneath their weight as Lydia screeched, a spider weaving her final web of despair. My heart raced as the light flickered, beginning to dim right when I felt the unmistakable weight of something solid against my back. Spurred by urgency, I launched myself backward into the unknown, some instinct telling me that beyond the expanse of shadow, there was liberation. I collided with the unseen surface, a barrier humming against my skin, and realized it was a mirror, one that I had overlooked in this torment of reality. "Nix." The frantic voice broke through the din, clearer this time. It was Eli Raw, with panic and darker trails of urgency whispered through the echoes. "Look at me! Look at me!" In that instant, the shadows recoiled as I pivoted, facing the glass. Ella's form rippled within, flickering like a dying flame battling to remain alive. "Do not let them take you. Focus on me. We're in this together." Heart hammering in my chest, I grasped onto his raw determination as shadows lashed out, wispy fingers grazing my skin while I felt the chill seep into the cracks of my resolve. But I refused them entry into my psyche. I focused on Ella's unyielding luminosity through the mirror, the urge to rescue him igniting an inferno deep within me. "Together!" I shouted back at the waiting darkness, my heart throbbing in synchrony with his. "We will face this." Just then, the shadows launched their final assault. The mirror began to pulse with chaotic energy, caught between reflective glass and shadowy horror. I lunged forward, but the glass twisted, and time itself morphed into a blurring paradox. "Join me, Nix. Stay!" Lydia howled, her clawed hands reaching out to me in a desperate grasp, but before I could comprehend the consequence of that decision, the mirror cracked, splinters cascading into a swirling void, suffocating my scream as I was thrust through a gateway of blazing shadows. The universe folded in on itself, and my last sight was the anguished expression of Eli, desperately reaching out to me. The cacophony of resonating shadows enveloped me, and with an agonizing pull, I was sucked into an unknown expanse, and as the darkness tightened around me, I heard a shattering whisper curled beneath the chaos, "Welcome to your eternity." The world twisted like a frayed thread, and I gasped, the air sharp and stale as though I had entered a crypt. Darkness enveloped me, thick and oppressive, a suffocating shroud that pressed down hard on my chest. I had no idea where Lydia's realm ended and this new nightmare began, or if there had even been a transition at all. All I knew was that the echoes of Eli's voice had vanished, drowned in the pervading silence. As I steadied my breath, peering into the gloom, shapes began to emerge in the obscurity. At first, they flickered at the edges of my Visiona dance of forms that seemed both human and grotesque, their movements entangled with relentless shadows. I suddenly realized that they were watching me, their eyes glimmering with a predatory hunger. My skin prickled, crawling with an instinctive dread that ran deeper than fear. It was survival kicking in. "Help us," one of the shadows whispered, its voice a haunting blend of sorrow and desperation. As it approached, the details materialized: the figure of a woman, her face stretched in eternal agony, her eyes pools of sorrow that seemed to reach for me through the dark. "They'll consume you too." I stumbled backward, my heart hammering wildly in my chest. The whispers amplified, an orchestra of fear rising around me, each voice distinct trapped souls, all clamoring for a way out. I racked my brain for something, any kind of recollection, a way to navigate this hell. "Focus." I shouted into the darkness, trying to channel the strength I had found before. "I am not your keeper." But the shadows surged closer, merging into a formless tide of despair, their whispers turning into a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm my mind. Without warning, the air around me shifted. The shadows twisted, forming a grotesque figure that towered above me, its face a shifting mask of agony. I fell to the ground, heart still pounding, and fought to control my rising panic. "Stay away from me," I gasped, "foolish girl." It hissed, the words dripping like venom. "Do you think you can escape?" With every syllable, black tendrils lashed out, striking the ground around me, sending tremors through the earth that rattled my bones. I had to move. I had to escape, and with that desperate thought, I flung myself forward, navigating through the mass of souls, remembering Ella's voice, the flicker of hope that had ignited a resurgence of strength within me. But they closed in, shadows spiraling tighter, their clamoring voices sinking beneath the surface of this waking nightmare. "Leave her, lest you suffer." Suddenly, another form emerged, this one more corporeal, a man with tangled hair and haunting eyes. "You must follow me. They are coming," he urged, gesturing desperately as if the shadows themselves were already clawing at him. I hesitated, but the weight of the darkness threatened to pull me under. I had no choice. With a leap of faith, I surged toward him, and he grabbed my wrist, his grip fierce and unyielding. Running through the labyrinth of despair, we weaved between the trapped souls and their wiry fingers that reached out with desperate urgency. I could feel a change in the air, a palpable shift that hinted at an unseen force drawing near. "What are you?" I demanded, trying to keep pace with the swift movements of the stranger. "Why are you helping me? There's no time." He spat back, his voice edged with urgency. "If we don't find the door, we will be just like them." He gestured ahead, where a faint glimmer of light flickered enticingly through the layers of shadows that enveloped us. "That's the exit. We have to reach it," and as we sprinted toward that fragile light, the shadows wailed louder, their fear morphing into rage. They twisted and contorted, turning into dark figures, frantically trying to block our path. Their faces morphed into ones I recognized, the anguished visages of Elias, the others from the motel, all pleading for me to turn back. "Please, don't leave us," they cried, their voices mingling into a painful symphony of despair that struck at my heart. But ahead, the glimmer pulsed stronger, echoing a warmth that promised freedom. "Keep going," the man shouted, his grip tightening around my wrist as we dashed across the void, the distance to the light stretching before us like an insurmountable chasm. I could feel their presence, thick and suffocating, reaching for us, clawing at our very souls. As we neared the light, a jarring scream erupted from behind. The shadows coalesced into a monstrous form, face twisted into a grotesque mask of fury, filling the air with its sickening stench. "You cannot flee. You belong here." It roared, and the shadows erupted into a whirlwind, lashes of darkness extending like caged serpents. Panicking, we lunged for the light, but just as we were about to reach the threshold, an icy claw latched onto my ankle, pulling me backward with a force so strong it nearly wrenched the bone from my body. No! I screamed, desperately reaching toward the glowing exit with my outstretched hand. In that moment, the world froze, my fate teetering on a razor's edge. "Help me!" I cried, my lungs burning from terror, and in that breathless suspension, I saw my chance. The man's eyes met mine, fierce and unwavering. But beneath their resolve flickered something else. Regret. Go. You must leave. He urged, the shadows wrapping tightly around him, their victory at hand. Don't look back. In a final act of desperation, I summoned every ounce of the light inside me, pushing against the tide of darkness, ripping away from the grasp of despair. My body surged forward, breaking free from its grasp. Just as I shattered the barrier's threshold, I felt an indescribable pain as darkness stalked the man, whispering promises of despair in his ears. With a final glance, a gaping maw of shadow swallowed him whole, and the door surged closed behind me, severing our connection. I collapsed onto the hard floor of a familiar space, the coolness of a concrete room washing over me. My eyes flitted open to the distant hum of neon lights. I lay in the dimly lit corridor of the motel, and as I gasped for air, panic crept into my heart anew. But the horror wasn't over. From behind the mirror in room 13, where the fragrant memories of stale blood and faded echoes intertwined, I heard a whisper laced with torment and unease. "Welcome back, Nix." I slowly turned my head. This time, the reflection wasn't of just me. It was each shadow, a parade of anguished faces, their mouths drawn into silent screams, memories swirling like smoke. And then I saw a flicker of movement, a familiar figure stepping out from the shimmering void of glass, hollow eyes gleaming with anguish. "Eli." "Nix," he murmured, his voice a twisted echo, "I found you." The air thickened with terror as he crossed the threshold, stepping into my reality once more. And as the walls trembled, shadows swirling around him, I realized with a sinking dread that the darkness had not simply come for might, had returned with one more captive from the depths of despair. "Together forever," Eli whispered, unable to contain the twisted glee etched across his face. The mirror shattered, and all I could do was scream. The sound of glass raining down around me echoed through the stillness of the corridor, mixing with my rising screams. I stumbled back, heart racing, as Eli stepped fully into my reality, his form growing denser with each passing second, too solid for comfort yet marred with an unsettling translucence. "Eli, no." I croaked, scrambling backward until my spine pressed against the wall, seeking any semblance of safety. "What happened to you? You were gone." His smile twisted, a grotesque parody of warmth. "Gone? No, Nix. I was never gone. You were the one who left." The shadows swirled hungrily around him, whispering sweet torment, encasing him in an aura of despair that magnified his presence. Each breath I took felt like inhaling shards of glass, the oppressive air thickening with malevolence. "Stay back." I gasped, desperate for the distance that was rapidly vanishing as he advanced. "This isn't you. You don't have to. He interrupted, voice like silk wrapped around barbed wire. "You have no idea how long I've waited, Nix. You think I was lost? I found a home, a place I belong." The shadows surged from him, grasping at the air like claws, their whispers now morphing into a cacophony of torment. "Join us," they chanted, an endless sea of voices becoming one in chilling unity. "Forever lost, get away from me." I screamed, racking my mind for some form of escape or weapon to use against this nightmare. Panic bubbled within me, a tide of fear threatening to pull me under as the darkness tightened its grip. I thought of the man from earlier. Had he truly fallen prey to this world too, his sacrifice in vain? In an act of sheer desperation, I turned and darted toward the nearest door, room 12, throwing it open to the blinding light of the hallway. But as I raced inside, I was met not with sanctuary, but with horror. Every surface was coated in shadows, pictures turning to eerie portraits of the damned. "Nix," a voice slithered from the murky corners of the room, and I spun around, searching for the source. There stood faces of the trapped, flickering like dying flames, familiar voices from the motel, the others who had vanished into the darkness weeks before. Help us. He won't let you leave. They reached out, fingers stretching toward me, their eyes wide with an urgent plea. You can't succumb, but I was paralyzed, rooted in place by fear, the shadows creeping closer as I felt Ella's presence looming behind me. You don't need them, he cooed, the shadows curling around my legs. You belong here, with me. The room seemed to warp, the walls closing in, eliciting a scream that clawed its way through my throat. With a feral surge, I forced my limbs to move, darting past the horrors trapped within, casting desperate glances towards the door. You all led me here, this wasn't my choice. I shouted at the throaty whisperings of the shadows, but suddenly, the door slammed shut as if pulled by unseen hands, locking me inside room 12. I fought against it, slamming my shoulder into the wooden barrier as darkness flooded the space, encasing me like a predator cornering its prey. That I will never be one of you. I screamed, feeling the shadows wrapping tighter, suffocating hope as they enveloped my limbs. Ella's laughter echoed around me, chilling my very soul. Oh Nix, he trilled softly, you're already part of us. You just don't know it yet. And just as he stepped forward to claim me, the air shifted violently. It felt as if time fractured for an instant, and a blinding flash engulfed the room. I was thrown to the floor, the world swirling in a storm of shadow and light. When my vision cleared, I found myself back in the corridor, the motel around me crackling with unnatural energy. But it twisted again. Room 13's door creaked open, revealing not the inside of the room, but an ominous black void spewing forth darkness. What on earth? I breathed, a chilling realization creeping through me as I struggled to my feet. This place, it's changing. From the depths of that darkness emerged figures, their faces aligned with fury and agony. They slipped out, one by one, as though they had been waiting for this very moment. My heart plummeted as I recognized my former co-workers, Greg and Lydia, their once familiar faces twisted by shadows, their eyes voids of despair. This is your fault. They howled in unison, their voices blending in a chilling harmony that pierced through me. You brought us here. You brought the darkness. I stumbled back, colliding with Eli, who was suddenly at my side, a sinister smile stretching across his face as he pointed to the encroaching mass of lost souls. Together, my love, we can be limitless. The shadows surged forward as I let out a strangled cry, surrounded, trapped in a cage of turbulent nightmares, their mouths opening wide in insatiable hunger. Nix, you cannot escape what you've awakened, Eli whispered, as the darkness closed in around us. And in that moment of collective terror, I understood the door was no longer just a threshold, it had become a conduit, funneling the lost into our world. And I was at the center, a spark igniting a wildfire of despair. With a lurch in my gut, I realized what it meant. They were rising, and I was powerless to stop it. Shadows danced and swirled around me as the darkness drew near, their chilling promises mixing with the laughter of a loved one turned oppressor. The last thing I saw was the gleam of Ella's eyes as he stepped back, allowing the souls to close in, his last words branded into my mind, welcome your new family, Nix. And then, the darkness swallowed me whole. It was inescapable. Nostalgia for the living stung as I felt blood thrum in my veins, a reminder of life that now seemed a distant echo, a haunting melody of what could have been. I drifted in turmoil, surrounded by the remnants of boundless shadows and whispers. The transient energy from the motel, a homing beacon for the lost, and the torture throbbed beneath my skin. That I'd returned at first, I believed I had conquered the darkness, carved my own path of resistance. But as I stared out at the abyss, its depths twisted and contorted, memories rushed forth, faces entwined with despair, the souls I could not save, clawing from unseen chains. They thronged close, impossibly familiar yet painfully foreign, ghostly hands reaching for me, their features marred by the lure of warning, a hungry longing that burrowed itself deep within me. Help us, they cried, a symphony of anguish that raked my insides raw. My heart raced, a constant echo of guilt and sorrow. From the shadows materialized the figures of my lost co-workers, Lydia, Greg, twisted versions of the familiar faces who once rustled through the motel, echoes of laughter skimming like waves across the surface of dark waters. Their eyes, once vibrant, were now drowned in nothingness, aspecting anguished curses that rose like smoke. "Welcome home," Lydia hissed, her sentiment oozing with genuine mirth, as if the haunting sting of betrayal had become her chosen weapon. "You belong to us now," Greg echoed, the distortion of his once cordial voice wrapping around my heart like barbed wire. "You awakened the slumbering darkness, and now you must pay." The truth crashed over me like waves in a storm. Through my indignant rebellion, my desperate fight against the inevitable, I had merely propagated their curse. I had underestimated the sinister web woven by the woodland shadows, and every flicker of light that sparked within me had only served to amplify their presence. Eli remained a lurking specter behind me, twisted joy lining his features as shadows swirled around him, feeding off the discord that thrummed in the air. "You see, my love, you were never meant to be an outsider," he whispered, his voice dripping seduction. "This world is your legacy as much as mine." That I gritted my teeth, shaking my head. The shadows writhed, inching closer. The wisps, intertwined with longing and malice, gnawed at my resolve, seeking to draw me deeper into their fold. Dread prickled at my skin, the realization that I had not traversed time, but had succumbed to becoming a vessel. Eli had fallen and taken my hand, and the thread tethering my existence unraveled piece by piece. No. I fought for my life. I shouted, courage trembling at the roots, "I do not belong to the darkness." "Every struggle, every scream only fuels it more," Greg said, closer now, his shadowy visage flickering like the broken glass of the photograph that once captured Lydia's innocent smile. "And now your sacrifice is upon you, a choice: stay or save them." The darkness bristled at my words, an intoxicating concoction stirred, growing thick with intentions unspoken. Among the myriad of wails, a singular voice emerged, its tonality distinct yet haunting, razor-thin echoes of despair crafting an eternity of longing. "Let me go," Lydia's phantom whispered, weaving through the marionette strings knotted about me. "You can help us all if you let yourself in." The plea settled like charcoal upon my soul, burning the edges of reason. "Your purpose is evident," Ella's voice echoed triumphantly, "embrace it and gate your redemption. Or you can leave them, imprisoning them in this oblivion, trapping them forever." Panic gripped me as I feared my resolve was failing. I could sense their desperate hunger clawing at the windows of my mind, but the flickers of courage awakened, lighting my spine. The memories clouded, contorted but real, laughter shared over coffee on night shifts, hushed conversations about escaping this haunting place. Together we were stronger, I whispered into the depths, as if trying to retrieve that unity lost against the tide. An answer ignited within the vacuum of despair, an ember threatening to burn brighter than the shadows. "No!" they all cried, shadows looming over me, voices overlapping, merging into a skein of desperation that threatened to tear me apart. "You're ours. Stay with us." But in that moment, I stood taller, the seeds of resistance blossoming into blooming defiance. "I am not afraid," I declared, and I thrust my palms up, pushing against the tide of darkness that surged forward, the swirling agony folding and twisting away from me. "Release them." The energy pulsing around me vibrated with desire, echoes painting a picture of worth. With each word spoken, brighter and brighter the light blossomed. I felt fingers grasping around me, pulling me into the center of the vortex, forcing clarity and confusion together. "You cannot imprison my memory." The shadows recoiled, skipping away as the light expanded, engulfing the hollow cries of my peers. The wave rippled through, sweeping past Eli, his eyes widening as he stepped back, horror clawing over his features. "No. You cannot abandon this realm. You are the one who has abandoned us." I cried back, finally letting the tears roll down my cheeks, "And it's in your darkness that I have found my strength." As the shadows shrieked, the flood of determination coursed through my fingertips, coiling around me like a protective veil. I churned my energy, allowing the light to morph as it broke through the barrier of darkness. And in that singular moment, everything shifted. Trapped souls surged around me, transmuting swiftly through the beam blindingly bright, and the pain, the darkness they had endured evaporated as they reached out to the light. Their expressions transformed, drained of anger, and they melted back into the radiance. One by one, they drifted into the sanctuary beyond despair, their laughter reverberating in the air with newfound freedom. But Eli stood frozen, shadows coiling around him, clenching tighter. No. He roared, his voice laced with a chilling desperation, you cannot leave me. I am here with you eternally. I felt his pull, the emotional complexity of it luring me, but my resolve rang Lodare wasn't what I thought. He was a shadow manifesting heartache. A dying image of what the darkness turned him into. Let go. I cried, straining against the tide, it's not love, it's a prison. The shadows screamed, their voices melting into one wretched sound as I surged forward, unearthing remnants of hope that tethered me to those lost. I thrust my hands toward Eli, fueled by the memories of brighter days, a warm embrace of love. Together, we can overcome this. I shouted as the light unfurled, detaching from Eli, who growled fiercely, shadows bursting forth like animalistic roars, the essence of lost dreams seeping into the air. Let me show you, I implored, extending my hand, show me your face. His visage flickered momentarily, a fleeting hint of who he was, wrapped in vulnerability, and then the shadows devoured him, pulling him back into darkness once more, consuming everything in his wake. Eli screamed, a cry cut short as his form fragmented, sucked into the void, taking with him the remnants of my connection to this cursed reality. The echoes of anguished souls began to fade, swallowed by the light, and there I stood alone but free. The corridor of the Whispering Pines Motel flickered, the air shifting, portions of reality bending, morphing around me. Memories of night shifts, laughter, the moments of terror blending into one insurmountable impression of strength. The walls shivered, and the sound of shattering glass reverberated, the reflection of the past turning to ash, a final curtain falling. A creeping realization settled in, worming softly through the remnants of my mind, this was fleeting. The anguish I had once caged had not just shifted, the darkness lingered, merely abandoned this space until it could reclaim its strength. But I had escaped. I chose to embrace the warmth of life, the flickering light of hope that surged above despair. As I stepped forward from the clutches of that tormented place, I turned for one final look back, at the engulfed shadows and the remnants of their cries. For now, I had pushed despair aside, but the darkness still lingered, hiding quietly within the corners of all who had been lost. And as I whispered a prayer over those who had become specters of their reality, I found myself chuckling softly, the chill running down my spine melding into acceptance. Tonight, the light has won. And as the words rolled off my tongue like a promise, I stepped back into the world I had fought so fiercely to reclaim, but unbeknownst to me, within the twisted depth of the shadows, there lingered Ella's voice. Until we meet again, my love. And in the pulse of that reminder, I could feel the darkness watching, biding its time, ready to wade through the cracks of salvation once more. The chill in my bones was only just beginning.